Albert Einstein was not just a scientist, he was one of the greatest minds in human history. When you hear his name, you probably think of wild white hair, intelligent eyes, and complex equations like E=mc². But behind those famous photos was a man who changed the way we understand the universe. He was a thinker, a dreamer, and a person who believed in imagination more than anything else. He once said, "Imagination is more important than knowledge. For knowledge is limited, but imagination encircles the world." Einstein was born in 1879 in Ulm, Germany. At that time, nobody knew that this small baby would grow up to become a legend. As a child, he was quiet and thoughtful. Some people even worried about him because he started speaking later than other children. But from an early age, Einstein was curious about everything. He would look at nature and wonder, why does this happen? How does this work? He wanted to understand what was hidden behind the things we see. Today, when we think about Einstein, we think about genius. But he was not just a genius in physics, he was also a philosopher who thought deeply about life, war, peace, and human nature. He used his fame to speak up for what he believed was right. He believed in peace, freedom, and using knowledge to help humanity, not to destroy it. In this video, we will discover the life of Albert Einstein. We will see how he went from a silent little boy in Germany to the man whose ideas changed the world of science forever. We will learn about his childhood struggles, his groundbreaking discoveries, and the lessons we can take from his incredible journey. As you listen, think about how one person's curiosity and imagination can truly change the world. Because if Einstein taught us anything, it is this: never stop asking questions. Albert Einstein's childhood was not the childhood you might expect from a genius. When he was born in 1879 in Ulm, Germany, his parents, Hermann and Pauline Einstein, were worried about him. His mother even thought there was something wrong with his head because it was larger than normal. As a baby, Einstein was very quiet. He did not start speaking until he was almost 4 years old. People thought he was slow or less intelligent, but inside his mind, thoughts were already dancing like stars in the sky. When he was a little boy, his father gave him a simple magnetic compass. As he watched the needle always point in the same direction, young Einstein felt something magical. He realized that there were invisible forces in the world, forces that we cannot see but that move everything around us. This tiny compass awakened his curiosity about physics and nature forever. It was his first moment of wonder, a moment that planted the seeds of his future discoveries. Einstein was not a perfect student. In primary school, his teachers thought he was strange because he asked too many questions. They wanted him to memorize facts and repeat them, but he wanted to understand the why behind everything. His teachers even told his parents that he would never achieve anything in life. Imagine being told as a child that you are worthless, when in reality, your mind is just different and full of ideas the world cannot yet understand. He also struggled with the strict rules and discipline of the German education system. He hated learning by rote and felt that school crushed creativity. Later in life, he said, "It is a miracle that curiosity survives formal education." For Einstein, learning was about freedom, exploration, and wonder, not just passing exams. Despite his dislike for school, he loved mathematics and science. By the time he was 12, he was teaching himself algebra and geometry from books at home. When he was a teenager, he started reading advanced physics books on his own, fascinated by how light, energy, and space worked. He often sat alone, thinking for hours about invisible forces and imagining himself riding on a beam of light across the universe. But life was not easy for his family. His father's business failed, and they moved to Italy to find work. Einstein stayed behind to finish school but felt lonely and disconnected. Eventually, he left school without a diploma and joined his family in Italy. Later, he enrolled at the Swiss Federal Polytechnic in Zurich. Even there, some professors did not like him because he questioned their teachings. But Einstein didn't care. He believed in thinking for himself. Looking back, Einstein's early struggles teach us something powerful. Just because you don't fit in with the system does not mean you will fail in life. Sometimes, being different is your greatest strength. Einstein's curiosity, stubbornness, and unique way of thinking were exactly what made him the man who would change science forever. After his graduation from the Swiss Federal Polytechnic in Zurich, Einstein faced another struggle, finding a job. Despite his intelligence, he could not get a position as a professor because some professors did not like his attitude of questioning everything. Finally, he found work as a clerk at the Swiss Patent Office in Bern in 1902. His job was to examine other people's inventions and write reports about them. Some people might think this job was boring, but for Einstein, it was perfect. It gave him time to think deeply about physics while doing his daily work. Then came the year that changed not only his life but also the entire world of science, 1905. Today, scientists call it Einstein's annus mirabilis, which means miracle year in Latin. In that single year, while working at the patent office, Einstein published 4 scientific papers that would transform physics forever. First, he explained the photoelectric effect, showing that light could act like both a wave and a particle. This discovery won him the Nobel Prize in Physics in 1921. Second, he wrote about Brownian motion, proving that atoms and molecules really existed by explaining how tiny particles moved in liquid. Third, he presented his special theory of relativity, which introduced the idea that time and space are not separate and unchanging, but connected and flexible depending on how fast you move. And finally, from this theory came the most famous equation in the world, E equals mc squared, showing that energy and mass are 2 forms of the same thing. Imagine this, a young man, working in a small office, thinking about the universe so deeply that he changes the very way we understand reality. Before Einstein, people thought time was always the same everywhere, and space was like a fixed stage where everything happened. After Einstein, scientists realized that time and space are like a fabric that bends and stretches with mass and energy. This was not just a small discovery, it was a revolution. His fame grew quickly. People started calling him a genius and inviting him to universities and conferences. But Einstein remained simple in his lifestyle. He didn't care about fame or money, he cared about ideas. In 1915, he published his general theory of relativity, which expanded his earlier ideas to include gravity. He showed that gravity is not just a force pulling things down but the bending of spacetime by massive objects like stars and planets. Years later, when scientists observed light bending around the sun during a solar eclipse exactly as Einstein predicted, he became an international superstar overnight. But despite his fame, Einstein remained humble and playful. He loved playing the violin, taking long walks to think, and talking with children about their dreams. For him, the beauty of the universe was more important than any prize or title. He once said, "I have no special talent. I am only passionately curious." Albert Einstein's discoveries changed science, technology, and our understanding of reality forever. His work led to the development of nuclear energy, GPS systems, and countless modern technologies. But beyond his theories, he showed the world the power of curiosity, imagination, and daring to question everything you are told. Even though Albert Einstein became the most famous scientist in the world, his life was not without challenges, pain, and deep worries about humanity's future. During the 1930s, the political situation in Germany changed dramatically. Adolf Hitler and the Nazi Party rose to power, and their ideas were filled with hatred, racism, and violence. Being Jewish, Einstein was immediately in danger. His home country, the place where he studied and built his reputation, became unsafe for him. In 1933, he left Germany forever and moved to the United States, where he began working at the Institute for Advanced Study in Princeton, New Jersey. He never returned to Germany, the country that gave him his education but also forced him to run for his life. In America, he continued his research in physics, but his heart was heavy seeing the rise of war and hate across the world. One of the most difficult decisions Einstein ever made was signing a letter to President Franklin D. Roosevelt in 1939, warning him that Nazi Germany might be developing an atomic bomb. Although Einstein did not work on the Manhattan Project himself, his letter pushed the United States to begin its own research into nuclear weapons. Later, when he saw the destruction of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, he felt deep regret. He said, "If I had known they would do this, I would have become a watchmaker instead." This regret stayed with him for the rest of his life. He believed that science should serve humanity, not destroy it. In his later years, Einstein focused on unifying the laws of physics with a single theory that explained everything, the theory of everything. He spent decades trying to connect gravity and electromagnetism, but he never succeeded. Yet he never gave up. Even in his 70s, he woke up every morning, went to his office at Princeton, and continued his calculations, still driven by curiosity. Outside science, Einstein was a strong supporter of civil rights. He spoke out against racism in America, calling it a disease of white people. He supported black activists and refused to stay silent in the face of injustice. He also believed in peace and global unity. After World War II, he became an active supporter of nuclear disarmament, warning the world about the dangers of atomic weapons. In his personal life, Einstein was a simple man. He wore the same type of gray sweater every day because he didn't want to waste his brainpower choosing clothes. He loved playing the violin and often said that if he weren't a physicist, he would be a musician. Music gave him peace when his mind was tired from thinking about the universe. Albert Einstein died in 1955 at the age of 76 from a burst blood vessel in his heart. Even in his final moments, he was thinking about his equations. His last words were in German, spoken to a nurse who didn't understand them, so no one knows what he said at the end. But what we do know is that he left behind a legacy of knowledge, curiosity, and a deep desire for a peaceful world. Einstein's later life shows us that no matter how successful you become, life will always bring new challenges. But if you face them with courage, keep your mind open, and never stop learning, you can continue to grow and inspire others until your very last day. Albert Einstein's life was more than just numbers, theories, and complex equations. His life was a journey of curiosity, courage, and staying true to who he was, even when the world didn't understand him. From being a quiet boy who spoke late to becoming the voice of science across the world, his story shows us that being different is not a weakness, it can be your greatest strength. One of the biggest lessons we can learn from Einstein is the importance of curiosity. He always asked questions, even when everyone else stopped. For him, learning was not about memorizing facts for exams, but about understanding how the world works. He believed that imagination was even more important than knowledge because imagination has no limits. It is imagination that lets us dream of things that do not yet exist and find solutions that nobody thought of before. Another lesson is about failure and rejection. Throughout his life, Einstein faced many people who didn't believe in him, teachers who thought he was slow, professors who ignored him, and scientists who doubted his ideas. But he never allowed their disbelief to define him. He believed in himself. Even when his theories were too advanced for others to understand, he kept working on them patiently until the world caught up with his mind. Einstein also teaches us about responsibility. Although his equation E=mc² led to the creation of nuclear weapons, he spent the rest of his life warning humanity about their dangers. He understood that knowledge gives us power, but with power comes the responsibility to use it wisely. He used his fame to stand up against war, racism, and injustice. He didn't just want to be remembered as a genius, he wanted to be remembered as someone who tried to make the world a better place. Lastly, Einstein's life shows us that age is never a limit to learning. Until his very last day, he was working on his theories, trying to solve the mysteries of the universe. Even when his hair turned completely white, his eyes still sparkled with curiosity. He believed that life is like riding a bicycle, to keep your balance, you must keep moving. So, as we finish this story about Albert Einstein, remember that you don't need to be a genius to follow his example. You just need to stay curious, believe in your dreams, stand up for what is right, and never stop learning. Because in the end, it is not about being the smartest person in the room, but about being the person who dares to imagine a better world and works every day to make it real.